Welcome back to the weekly Education Pulse. I'm Sami.
And Tony. Each week we bring to you the latest stories shaping international school market around the world.
In this episode, we're heading to India, where two very different stories reveal just how diverse and dynamic the country's education landscape has become.
And we'll look at how British-style boarding schools are emerging as the new luxury status symbol for India's wealthy families, and how Australia is stepping into the picture, bringing its national curriculum to India as more affordable global alternative.
And then we'll dig into Tony's latest articles, exploring a bold new proposal in the US to raise visa fees for international teachers to $100,000.
And it's a story that could reshape how schools recruit, who gets access to the global talent, and what it means for equity across the international education system.
But first to the news, where in India, British-style boarding schools have become the latest must-have for the country's wealthy families.
A report in The Print describes how new luxury schools, inspired by the likes of Eton and Harrow, are opening across India, charging fees that rival or even exceed top international schools abroad.
Yeah, these aren't just schools, they're luxury ecosystems. Many of these new campuses include golf courses, equestrian programs, swimming domes, and even wellness spas, designed to replicate the full British boarding experience, but on Indian soil.
That's the key point. This is about status and lifestyle as much as education. For many ultra-high net worth families, enrolling their children in one of these schools is a statement, a way of signalling global sophistication without sending their kids overseas at a very young age.
Yeah, and we've seen this coming over the last 5 years. India's premium education sector has become one of the fastest growing in Asia, driven by both returning diaspora and local entrepreneurs. Families that once looked to the UK or Switzerland are now choosing domestic boarding schools that deliver the same perceived prestige.
There's another layer to this, and that's differentiation. Traditional international schools in cities like Mumbai, Delhi, Bengaluru have saturated with that high fee day school market. So this ultra premium boarding model is filling a new niche, part school, part experience.
Exactly. It's a segment designed not around scale, but exclusivity. And it reflects a broader transformation in India's education landscape, where schooling for the wealthy is shifting from simply academic excellence to a curated lifestyle product.
That said, it also sharpens the contrast with the rest of the sector. While India's elite education market is booming, the mid-market, where affordability and quality meet, remains underserved, especially outside the metros.
True, but for now, this wave of new British-inspired boarding schools shows one thing very clearly. India is confident enough to build its own version of global prestige, and education has become a new frontier for that expression.
And staying in India, there's another fascinating development. The Western Australian curriculum is expanding across the country.
Yes, the School Curriculum and Standards Authority of Western Australia has signed partnerships with schools in India to deliver its international programme, positioned as globally recognised yet more affordable alternative to the UK and US systems.
The move makes sense. While British and American curriculum dominate India's 950 plus international schools, affordability and accessibility are becoming key drivers for parents, especially as demand moves beyond the big metro areas.
Absolutely. The Indian international schools market has been growing at over 7% annually, with strong demand in tier 2 cities like Pune, Ahmedabad, and Chandigarh. But for many families, A levels and the IB remain out of reach due to cost. So the Australian pathway fills that gap.
And Australia has a strategic advantage: cultural familiarity, high quality tertiary links, and an education system already proven in the Asia Pacific. Schools adopting the Western Australian Certificate of Education can offer students direct university access across Australia, the UK, Canada, and beyond.
Plus, from an operator's perspective, it's attractive. The waste model is modular, flexible, and scalable, allowing schools to integrate it alongside national or bilingual programs more easily than the IB or A level frameworks.
That's important for India as policymakers push forward the national education policy and the national curriculum framework, international curricula that align with the NEP's focus on skills, inquiry, and flexibility are being welcomed rather than resisted.
So what we're seeing here is the rise of a third global pillar. Alongside the UK and US systems, the Australian curriculum is establishing itself as a credible international export, especially for cost-sensitive emerging markets.
If it succeeds in India, it could unlock a huge potential, positioning Australia as a serious education exporter, not just for higher ed, but also K-12 international schooling.
All right, Tony, well, let's turn to your latest article now, the one that's already sparked a lot of conversation online. You wrote about a new US proposal to raise visa application fees for teachers to $100,000, and that's an extraordinary figure. So what exactly is being proposed here?
Well, it really is extraordinary. The idea is that the US would increase visa costs for international applicants. Now, this isn't targeting teachers, but obviously does include teachers. So from a few $1,000s to $100,000 per application. It's framed in a way as to streamline processing, reduce dependency on overseas hiring, but for education, it could be devastating.
Yeah, because schools across the US, particularly in certain regions, they depend heavily on international teachers, don't they?
That's right. Many public school districts, especially in rural states like Alaska or areas facing shortages in math, science, languages, rely on global talent to fill vacancies. If this fee goes ahead, that pipeline effectively collapses. Most districts simply can't afford it.
So in effect, the schools that rely most on international recruitment, often those in lower income or rural communities, would be hit hardest.
That's right. And the fee wouldn't affect everyone equally. International and private schools, which operate on a tuition-based model, may have some financial flexibility and may find ways to absorb some of this. Obviously, not filling the numbers of the school, but if it's a few staff places, sure. Public school districts just couldn't do this. So we'd like to see a widening gap. One group of students continuing to benefit from diverse specialized teachers, and another group losing access altogether.
Yeah, you use the phrase a policy shock that reinforces inequity. Can you explain what you mean by that?
So we tend to think of immigration or visa policy as something separate from education, but in reality, they're deeply connected. A decision like this, made for bureaucratic or political reasons, could directly shape who teaches in American classrooms and who doesn't. It risks turning an administrative change into a major equity issue.
In your piece, you also explore how schools might respond if this goes through. Let's talk about those alternatives. What could schools realistically do?
Well, there are a few routes. One is hybrid and online teaching models. So using virtual classrooms where one certified teacher can reach students across multiple states. Another would be regional collaboration, where districts share teachers for hard to staff subjects. There's also an advocacy angle, pushing for exemptions that classify international teachers as being in the national interest. And of course, longer term, investing in grow your own pipelines to train local talent.
And the great solutions, but each of those comes with challenges as well, especially when it comes to scale and quality.
Definitely. Hybrid models raise questions about infrastructure and student engagement. Regional sharing can be complex to coordinate. And developing local pipeline, that takes time. It doesn't solve today's shortages. But the point is that inaction isn't an option. Schools will have to innovate in some way.
And that's what I found so interesting about your closing thought, that this could actually be a catalyst for innovation, not just for crisis.
Yeah, this policy, if it happens, forces education systems to rethink how they deliver specialist teaching. Maybe it drives more collaboration between international schools and public school districts. Or, it could accelerate hybrid models that make quality teaching more widely accessible. But it's going to require creativity, partnership, and an equity mindset.
So in a way, this proposal is a stress test, not just for the US education, but for the relationship between global mobility and public policy.
Exactly. And we talk a lot about resilience in schools. This is another moment where adaptation is key. If international schools can navigate global disruption quickly, maybe public systems can too, with the right partnership and support. Otherwise, the divide only grows.
Yeah, sobering but fascinating perspective, Tony. Thanks for unpacking that. It's a reminder that even policies written thousands of miles away can have a huge, ripple effect to classrooms all around the world.
And that brings us to the end of this week's Weekly Education Pulse.
Yeah, thanks for joining us as we explored India's evolving education market, from luxury boarding schools to new, more accessible curriculum pathways, and unpacked the ripple effects of US visa policy on global teacher mobility.
And it's a reminder that education never stands still, whether it's new markets emerging, new models expanding, or policies reshaping how our schools operate.
Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss our next episode.
We'll be back next week with more global updates, insights, and analysis from the international schools sector.
Until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.